Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful. I'm back in the studio today with some more experimenting. So if you're just joining me for the very first time, welcome. I hope if you enjoyed this video, you'll please give me a thumbs up and say hello down in the comments. If you haven't clicked on subscribe yet to follow my channel, it costs you nothing. Just click on subscribe, and then if you hit the little bell, it will notify you when I have posted a new video. So the last few days I have been working on some papers, and I'm getting ready to kind of start a new project that I mentioned in the last video. So I thought as I begin here, kind of flip through just some of the experiments that I have done in the last couple of days and show you these while I talk. So if you haven't watched the last couple of videos, I was working on making some more grunge papers. I had used some of my originals in Elaine's journal, and then I decided to make a couple of journals that may end up in my Etsy shop using some of these types of papers that I've created using different techniques. And it had been a while since I had made any of them, and using them up just gave me an excuse to make more. And I have some that I really like how they turned out, so I've scanned them all before I use them, and I'm gonna put together a new kit, I think, of grungy papers, because these will be different than the previous first kit that I have done. So the techniques, if you want to learn how to make these so you can make them yourself, then you'll want to watch the last couple of videos that I did, and I'll put links down below for you. And then I'm going to put the entire playlist also for my making grungy papers. That way you can see some of the other techniques that I have done in the past. Some of them very similar to this, but just like anything, if you haven't done something in a while, your hand is maybe different. The amount of things, the color palette that you want to use, how busy they are or plain they are, just depends on your mood. So take a look at those and just see the different things. And then, like I said, for those of you who don't want to make your own, then I'll put together a kit for you. So these are just some of the ones that I made that I really like how they turned out. If you did watch the last video, I was talking about, well, I think it's 2 videos ago, where I started playing around with this. I love this one. I just love that. I had mentioned different ways that you can dry these papers, and also whether or not you dry them stacked or do them individually. So I kind of have a favorite, I think, now. I'm going to set a couple of these aside because I've done some other little different techniques on them. Let's see, that I wanted to share. So I'll go over those in a minute. I did decide that I do like stacking them. I really like that one too. I do like stacking them because you get a lot of interest on the front and the back. And then I decided, that one's really pretty too. Can you see that shimmer? They just look like granite, you know, or stone marble counters, that kind of thing. I decided that in order to be patient, at 4 o'clock, because I usually stop working at 5, at 4 o'clock or 3:30, whatever, I will start a batch of papers and maybe do a dozen or so and lay them out on the trash bags in my studio on the floor, and then I just leave. That way I don't get impatient about wanting to force dry them, put them in the oven or anything like that. And so that has actually worked out really well to get a really good quality paper. The other thing is I do like stacking them. So what I've done is I will start working in my tray on papers, and I'll stop when I get to one that I just love. And that way I'll take that whole pile off and let that start drying. And then in the evening, maybe before bedtime, I'll come check them, and the stacks will be dry enough that I can pull them apart and lay them out individually, so that I'll get some of those creases that you get, the folds, from having them lay on the garbage. See, none of these have them because they probably dried in stacks. But you get these little crease marks, these folds. And so I'll finish drying them that way. And then you get interest on both sides. The other thing, so I'll stop when I get to one that I really like, even if there's only 2 on there, just in case. That way it'll dry. Like I think some of these that I really ended up loving, I loved how they were, and so I didn't want to stack anything on top of them. So I'll just let them dry that way. And I'm really happy with how they turned out. So I like doing that. And then the other thing is, if there was one that I really didn't like, I threw a stencil on top of it. And I love how those turned out. So I'm going to have to do batches and batches of these because it's super easy and it just adds that extra layer. And then I also did a thing where I didn't just put this on a single one by itself. If it had a stack, I went ahead and put the stencil on the top. I wanted to see how far it would transfer through. Would it go, this is the back side, obviously it's more subtle, but I love that. Just looks like old wallpaper. I wanted to see how far it would go through, and I'll show you on this one. I wanted to see if there was any more. This was a separate one that I think I just had as a single sheet because you can see the creases where it was laying on the garbage bag. So that stencil went down on a single layer. I think this one went down on multiple layers. And then this one I know went down on multiple layers because I can see them through. That was a different technique. So this would have been the top where I dropped the stencil, and then the back side is subtle, but then it even went through to the next one because this was just in a stack. I didn't do it twice. So I really love how that turned out. And then the other thing that I did is I like this one more than this one. I was playing around with it in the tray, and I just used the back of, I think I just used the tip of the pipette that I had and just started like scribbling and making marks to see if they would show, because your paper is really wet and it didn't tear it or anything, and I don't feel anything, but it just made the inks kind of spread around like you were writing on it. This one I did also. I just didn't like the pattern that I did as much. But it's just another thing I wanted to see. So now I'm thinking I need to do some where I intentionally do like Islamic writing or something like that, or just mark making, and see how that'll turn out. So mark making and stencils are another thing to add. Other than that, the process was exactly the same as all the rest. So it was just kind of another technique I wanted to share with you. So now I have all of these papers that I can score. I've scanned them already and use in journals. So I think I'm going to score these and mix them in with the folios that I had already created for my next journal. So these papers I had already shown you in the previous. These were from my demos that I've just done these this week, over the weekend. I guess we're on Tuesday now. So I've done quite a few, enough for a journal, but now that I've done these, I think I want to mix them all together. So I'm going to be putting together another journal, and I already have the cover that I want to use, and I decided I was going to try to do a different type of stitching for the binding with an open spine that you see. So I've chosen this book, and it kind of has an Art Deco kind of design. It's in pretty good shape, so I don't know that I'll do anything to this cover. I think I'm going to leave it. But if you watched the last video, I showed you that I was going to make some beads. Because it's called The Outline of Great Books, I thought it would be fun to use some book page somehow in my spine. So I created these beads in the last video, and they're made just with book page, just little tube beads. And so I don't know that I have enough, but I'm gonna at least try. I'm thinking I'm just gonna use these. I may pull in some other metallic beads, but I'm kind of thinking I want to see if I can come up with a design where I just use these in the spine. So I did a practice because it was a stitch that I had never done before. And so I decided I would do a practice one, and I happened to already have a book started that, I don't know how long ago I started it, but I had already cut a bunch of mixed media paper, but I hadn't bound it at all. And so I thought, well, I'll do this in the same kind of thing as an art journal, where the pages will lay all nice and flat. So I wanted to do similar to a kettle stitch sort of deal. So I found one, and I will find the video and put it down below, because I was trying to come up with just stitching it on my own without looking at something that actually existed as a pattern to do. And I was playing around with it and it was fine. I was just doing with some random glass beads. But I ended up finding this video of it's called a French twist, I think, binding. And it didn't have beads. It's just, you end up seeing these little twists in your pattern. And then this top and bottom is basically a kettle stitch that really holds it together. These hold it together too, but you can see it's almost like a little accordion because of the way it's stitched. So I will do this as a demo when I do the other journal, once I have the folios all put together. But I just wanted to show you what I was going to be working on next, in case you want to follow along and, you know, get your materials together. So I'm going to be doing the other one with my interesting grungy papers. And this one, though, I kind of want to finish it before I start the other one, since I do need to get the folios together anyway. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to turn the camera on. I'll see what happens. If I end up not liking it or wanting to share it, I will just end the video, cut out this portion, and end it in a different spot. But anyway, so I thought I would just play around with this, see what we can do. I have no idea what I want to do to this cover. I don't mind the color of it. It's not in the best shape, and it's a little boring. So I thought, if that's going to be an art journal, it might be kind of nice to have this be interesting. So I do like the black cloth tape that's there, and it's in good shape, so I kind of want to leave it. So I think I'm going to try taping it. And let's see, this is not the best tape. I'm going to use this gift wrap tape. I think it'll be better than this wall safe tape. And I'm just going to try to mask off the black, because I don't really want to do a technique on that. And I'm not worried about messing this up, because that first folio is going to get glued down to this anyway. So I'm going to, just for safety, I'm going to cover the other strip of it. And if this doesn't work, I can always paint over it later, but I'm going to at least try to keep it like it is. Okay, that's protected. And then, let's see, front and back, I think, is how this will go. Not that it matters. Okay, so I don't know what I'm going to do here, but I think I'm just going to maybe grab some collage papers, different things, and just see what I come up with. So I think I'm going to turn some music on and kind of maybe do this, speed it up and edit and all that sort of thing. So just, if you want to watch, sit back and enjoy, and I'll see you at the end. So this is what I ended up with. Now I wanted to show this and I ended up doing the other one. So I am going to, in the next video, do one from start to finish so that you can see how I do the stitching. Because it was a new stitch to me, I really wanted to kind of practice it. So I finished this cover off. This is an art journal and I really like how it turned out. They are a little bit loosey-goosey, kind of like a Coptic binding. Let me scoot out here just a little bit. Kind of like a Coptic binding, even though I did glue the first layer to the cover. So I think it'll be okay though. I really like how much space it gives you so that if you are going to collage or do anything like that, you have room in here to add thickness to your pages without it, you know, ending up like this. So I think I'm going to like working in it. And the cover, I just wanted to kind of show you, see how it has a little bit of a sheen. I have been using this Camar varnish and I really like it. It's not too shiny, but it really gives your artwork a little pop. So it just has that, you know, it's protective finish. I could do more on this if I wanted, but if you were using any kind of medium that would come off, it's going to seal that in there. And it's not too shiny. I don't mind it. I think it just really kind of heightens the color too. It's kind of like when you get something wet, how it has that kind of more vibrant look than when it's dry. So it just kind of gave it a nice finished look to it. So I really like how that turned out, and it's not tacky or sticky at all. So this was my French twist binding that I mentioned I wanted to try. So I did that, and then I did go ahead and I did the other one that I thought I would do on camera, but I just got a little ahead of myself. So it turned out okay. It's also a little bit loosey-goosey just because of the type of binding it is. And that's not always my favorite. There's kind of some big gaps there. I'm not wild about that, but again, I don't think that I'll mind working in something like that because it just allows you to have that space. You know, it's quite a bit of space, but instead of my journal becoming like this when it gets full, I can add to it, and I kind of have room in here, and so I don't mind that. I think also the other thing that I could do is to, in between each folio you have these gaps, is I could bridge that with some kind of, not, I wouldn't even call it a repair, but just say you want to do this as a spread. You don't want this big gap in the middle of your art, so you can add something to this. So like just a hinged piece of anything, paper. You've seen the different things that I use to repair with washi tape, anything like that. So I wanted to show you quickly, this is an old journal that I did, and it was actually put together with hinges, hinged pages. So instead of these being folios, they were individual separate pieces of paper, and the whole book was put together by hinging, and I made tapes out of different, some of them are digitals, and just glued them to hinge all the pages together. And that's what put the whole book together. And then I've shown this in a recent video where I glued a piece of fabric to the spine then after the book block was done. Glued that piece of fabric, and it's only this long. It's what holds the cover on. So, and it's really sturdy. So I think that you could do a similar thing in one of these so that by the time you're finished with it, it won't be so loosey-goosey because all the pages will be more connected to each other than they are like this. So I do like how it turned out. I did use my little beads. I like the color. I like how simple it is. And I do like the stitching. It is fun to do. Now that I've done 3 of them, I'll show you another one. They're all a little bit different, and that's why I kind of, because it was new to me, I wanted to practice a little bit and kind of see what it was like to add beads. So I started out with this one where I just put the beads on randomly, and I used my white bookbinding thread. And then in this one and the other one I'm going to show you, I used this bookbinding thread that I also used recently that has a lot more wax on it. So it worked out. I do also have a tip about needles, because using the beads, and I'll cover this in the next video, and actually a little bit more, because this one I stitched, normally doing a kettle stitch, which is what is along here, you use a curved needle, but because I was doing beads for one, this size bead was too small to fit my curved needle and the thread through, so that didn't work. And then this one, my thread and the bead hole was big enough that I could have fit a curved needle, but because my bead was so long, that didn't work either. So doing these two, I actually used two different needle ideas, and I'll share them with you in the next video when I actually put one together, but I'm just pointing that out now, so that if you try to do this, you're gonna think like, what kind of needle do I use for this? So I used two different ideas for this one. And then this one, I decided after doing the ones with the beading, I would take a step back because I think it will be easier to show you this stitch and how it looks by not putting beads on it, because it's called a French twist. And it's because you end up with this little twist in your spine. And so I'm going to show the next one that I actually do on camera without any beads, and that way you can kind of see it. The one thing that I would want to try, and I don't think I'll try it in this one, is it's kind of this whole loosey-goosey thing, because the kettle stitch is really holding them all together tight, but because of the way this is done, you know, it's kind of like this accordion thing you get going. So I think if I can figure out how, I think one way to do it would be creating on the ends of these a kettle stitch type knot. It's going to take a lot more work to do it, but I think if I did that, then the whole thing would end up being that little bit snug, you know, a little bit tighter of a spine. So that might be an experiment that I do later. This one is the cover I made with an old book cover. It was the same type of this, and it was, let me get in here a little bit. It was this size, but it was very damaged, and it was where you could bend. I mean, I can almost kind of still do this. I've stiffened it up a little bit, but it was very, very damaged. And so I thought, it's so cool because it's a book from like the 1800s, and I wanted to use it. It's super grungy, and I really liked it. So I cut it down. I cut the damaged part off of it and decided to make just a tiny little book. And to do that, if you want to do something similar, you have to do a little prep work to it. And I'm going to show you kind of on this one. Again, I think I'll cover that in the next video though, because I don't want this one to get too long. And I want to do kind of an actual journal on camera. So this is what I've been working on and just kind of practicing, but I really like how they turned out. And again, I used all my little papers. These are cut down, obviously smaller. And actually, part of the reason I did this one is sometimes when I would have the folios that would be just folded in half like this, if I was working on one into a journal and I ended up tearing it or something, I decided I would just cut it in half and then score and fold it again and just make a smaller journal. So whenever I damage a page, when I'm trying to work on a different one, I don't toss it. I just end up cutting it down even more, and that's what this one was. This was a few fragile pages that I just decided to go ahead and use and just do them in a smaller journal. So it's super cute. This one I did have to go ahead and repair that one. So I repaired it before I put it in on the inside. And then I also did it on the outside because I really liked that paper, but it was pretty fragile. I did find after starting this video, I did some more papers, and I didn't mention at the beginning, but when I did the next batch, I had my Hammer Mill 32-pound paper had arrived, and that turns out to be my favorite. I liked it. I like it because I like the weight of it and how sturdy it is, and also I put more of the glycerin into my coffee mixtures. I just added more than, I had just added a few drops in the first couple of batches. I added a little bit more, probably like to each one of those cups, maybe like half a teaspoon, something like that. And I think it really helped. So I'll probably need to do another video on making these papers again, because that is a tip that I had mentioned in the previous ones, but now I've kind of taken it a step further, and I do really think it helps. So that's this another cute little one. I don't know if anyone would be interested in these, experiments if you like a wonky journal, like this. I think, you know, when I see other videos of people who have done these different stitches, it's like they don't show you at the end that it does this. At least I haven't seen one. They kind of show you, you know, the view where it's all pretty, but you don't really know what it would be like to actually work in it. So I think it's fine. I think, again, you know, this one, because I don't have beads on there making more space, your gaps aren't as big. So I think this one's actually going to be super easy, even though it's a little wobbly, to be able to go and add that, you know, a piece of washi tape or something, and then do your journaling, that it's going to actually sturdy it up even more if you did that. So I really like how this one turned out. So I had another cover, and so this one was not as damaged, but I'm going to show you in the next video what I'm doing to prepare this one, and then we'll stitch up another journal. So thank you for watching to the end if you did, and have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.